Cool. So, hello and welcome, Josh. How are you doing, my man?
Doing great. I'm doing great. It's a very nice day here in Texas, and I'm stoked to be on the podcast, man.
Likewise, man. I've been tracking some of your videos on YouTube, man, and they have been super helpful. I have to say, my hips and my hammies haven't felt loose like this in years. So it's partly thanks to you and partly thanks to my physio. So I appreciate you being here, man.
I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, that's what we all want, right? Just
Ex-
those loose hips and
yeah.
make you feel a little bit more free in your body.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. So I'm interested. Like, what got you to this point of like being someone that was so you know, in tune with movement? Like what did your life look like to lead you up to this point?
Yeah, I mean, it started the opposite of that, right? Like I'm sure a lot of people's journeys start. I I played basketball in through university, and that kind of I had some injuries, and that started to like develop some poor patterns in my body. And then after basketball, I was like, well, you know what? I want to be like a crazy strength athlete. I want to like just be super strong. And of course, just packing like loads and loads of weight onto my body, already having these poor patterns, just like led me to tightness and injury and all that whole mess. And then finally, I had like a bigger knee injury. I tore a meniscus, and it just forced me like, hey, you need to change what you're doing. Um, it wasn't even a choice anymore. It was just like, no, this needs to happen, right? So, I started on this journey of like, okay, can't do anything with my knee for a long time. What can I do? And that just transitioned into more body weight movement, more gymnastic style strength training. And then once the knee healed, it was like, okay, now I want to like use my body in the most functional ways that I can. I want to crawl around. I want to climb. I want to be able to run and just do like athletic things like I could do as a kid. Um, and yeah, I just kept like following that, and I just fell in love with it. I never wanted to go back to like being the bro guy who only cares about how much weight he lifts, right? This other side was so much has been so much more rewarding for me. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. And then I just started teaching along the way of like, hey, this has been what's helping me. Like I used to be so stiff, and now I can do this. Now I feel good. And you might want to try these things out. And people liked it. So
Mm.
that's been the journey.
Yeah. So it's amazing, isn't it? How when you start to share your own journey and your own learnings, how people can kind of resonate with that. And I think that's kind of what I've seen with my own journey and like obviously the podcast and stuff. So what was that like for you to see that you kind of, started this thing just purely for yourself to like, get your body to be working more optimum and then sharing it and people being like, "Hey, this is really cool. Like we want to like keep with you on this journey."
Yeah, well, that was a big turning point of Strength Side and of the YouTube channel and of our brand. Is I was doing it for a while before, and I was kind of like approaching it as like me being this expert type of thing. Like, oh, like I'm this expert coach. I'm going to teach you how to do X, Y, and Z. And when I decided to change my approach a bit and just start sharing more so like, hey, like, telling the story of like, hey, like, man, I used to have the tightest hips ever. I took this route, and now like I'm feeling really good and I can do these things. And people really, really engaged with that type of sharing more than me trying to be the expert guy, right? And it felt a lot more natural for me too. It felt like really authentic, right? It's not like I'm sitting on my soapbox like preaching to people. It's like, this is my journey, and you can follow along with it, and you can like learn from it, or you don't have to. And man, like it's been really cool to take that approach, and it's been really cool to see the feedback from people. Like when I tell like the storytelling is so huge, right? Whenever I just like give a little bit of the story of the background and stuff, then people really resonate with it. And that's really exciting because then people see, oh wow, this guy was a lot like I'm feeling right now. So I see a trajectory where I can achieve like X, Y, and Z. I can loosen up my body, right? It doesn't have to be this way.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's like you like you say, if you approach it from an expert point of view, you almost detach people, don't you? Because you get to a point where it's like, oh well, like this dude's all the way up here, and I'm like all the way down here. Like I'm never gonna reach it. And I think one of the
Right.
things that really struck me most about your videos is like, I mean, I don't know literally how tall you are, but you're a big dude, right? You're well built. You look fairly big in frame, but you move so like effortlessly and graciously. So it's like, but seeing that didn't put me off. I wasn't like, oh man, I'm never gonna be like that. Like I was like, oh okay, I can see that this guy's like done some work towards it, because you talk about, like playing sports back in the day and stuff, and it really resonates. But I'm interested to hear if there was like a point for you where all of that just unlocked, like the freedom of movement unlocked, or whether you just kind of worked at it and it was a gradual process.
Mm, yeah, that's a great question. It has definitely been a gradual process. There's been definitely like points in the journey where you level up quite a bit. You're like, oh wow, like it seems like I gained like 5 points here overnight. But yeah, it's been the accumulation of years of work at particular things. And like I think that like when you really take on a challenge, um, and you are able to go through and get to the other side, that there's like this bit of like positive feedback loop, right? It's positive reinforcement that like, oh, like I put in the work and then I got the reward, and then it makes it easier along the way to just keep taking on these challenges and just keep staying in the work, and that's one of the things that I see the like the biggest obstacle for most people is just keeping at it, because like a lot of the time you just got to be doing this work in the trenches when it feels like nothing is improving and nothing is getting that much better. But it's like those are the people that really really have the long-term success when you can just like keep putting in that work, when it's just like what is this for, but I definitely have adopted that mindset over the years, because like I'm just like, okay, I can learn how to do anything, right? It just is going to take a significant amount of time and effort, right? And anybody can.
Yeah, and I think it's about not tying yourself to the end goal, essentially, isn't it? It's like just doing your bit every
Mm.
day is far better a place to focus on than focusing on like, okay, well, if I try and touch my toes, I can just get past my knees, and I'm still so far away from my toes. If you just focus on like that little bit extra every day, sooner or later you'll get to the point where you can touch your toes no problem. Just as an example, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny actually, because I played football, so soccer, you guys obviously call it, but we won't go there. I
I'm
played.
down with football.
Okay, good man. I played football yesterday for the first time in like 2 years, because similarly to what you were saying earlier, I put so much focus on getting my body stronger. And again, I'm not massive, right? But I put so much energy into getting myself stronger and lifting heavier weights, and my body just became very stiff, right, as well as strong.
Mm-hmm.
And a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, I was playing football, and I woke up in the morning, my back felt a little bit tight. Didn't think anything of it. I thought I'd warm up, it'll be fine. Played football, got home, was still a little bit tight, stretched, foam rolled, etc. And then like 10 minutes later, I was like, like sweeping the floor in my bedroom. And as I like stood up straight, my back just like something happened. It just like popped, and I was like, oh, and I like couldn't move for like 2 days almost.
Right.
And so that put me on like this journey of like, okay, let's explore more mobility, more flexibility. And yesterday I played football for the first time in 2 years. And I do this warm up where, it's like the high kicks, where you like kick one hand, like
Mm-hmm.
1 foot really high, and you like hit it with the opposite hand. So you like, kicking your straight leg really high to stretch your hamstrings. And I used to
Sure.
do that and feel really tight. And I did it yesterday for the first time since I last played football 2 years ago, and it felt so good. It felt so effortless. And I was like, until that
Mm.
point, I hadn't realized how much better the flexibility in my hamstrings had got. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So it's like, if you focus purely on just like trying to get that feeling, you're not gonna get there. You're gonna struggle with it mentally, I think. But if you just focus on like, okay, let me just do this one thing today, and these stretches and this today, and then tomorrow, and then the day after, and then, or however regularly you want to do it, all of a sudden you get a shock, basically, and a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a big component here that I think is like really missed on in the fitness industry. And it's like, it's this, can you, um, like create a feeling of safety in your body, right? And like this, I think, is what a lot of people run into, guys like us who are just like, I just need to like lift heavy weights, get bigger biceps and everything. So you're just constantly like pounding your body, putting yourself in like uncomfortable positions where you don't feel that safe. And what does that cause? It causes like a restriction, and it causes
Mm,
this stiffness in your body, right? To always be ready to like, huh, what do I need to do? Like, da 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 da. When you take some time off from that, you start taking care of your body, you start stretching. A lot of the time, like we think of stretching as like, oh, I'm lengthening this muscle. But what's really happening is your body's just feeling safer to let you go into these deeper ranges of motion, right? And it's like a lot of this relates so much to like personal life too, right? Like if you feel safe, then you can develop like deeper relationships, and you can find more flow in your work, and you can find passion and stuff, right? And it's when you feel like not safe, you're like on alert, that we get anxiety and like more stress accumulates and stuff. So that's been a big part of my practice, and that's what I try to teach too, is like, hey, let's do a session right now that is all about like just trying to feel better in our, like feel just really like nice and comfortable in our body, right? Accumulating that over time, so then that feeling can like be just more of what you feel all the time, right?
mm.
It's huge.
Yeah, I love that idea of the comfort and the safety, like you said. I think that's really, I've never really thought about it like that. It's like our bodies want to feel safe, whereas if they're under stress and pressure and being overworked, which is kind of what we do when we work out, for some benefit because that's how you get stronger, etc. But to the detriment, it's like your body's constantly in like a reactive state, like you said, of like what else are you gonna do to me now? Which is, I can see how that
Yes.
becomes harmful over time.
Yes, yes. And that's why, like, so you go out and you play football, and like you're like feeling this like not super loose in your body, so then you're gonna be more prone to injury, and you're probably not gonna perform that well, right? If you look at like the really high level performers in any sport, you look at like somebody doing a flip or something, you're like, how could I ever do a flip? But they're super relaxed while they're doing that flip, right? Because their body's like, it's cool, I got this, right?
Mm.
And that's just basically like what you want to, those are the feelings that you want to get into when you're trying to like master any type of skill or anything in life, right? We just like want to be in that relaxed zone, where we can concentrate but also like feel calm and perform well.
Yeah, yeah, so interesting. And it's like, I guess, the same with life, isn't it? In general, it's like the more comfortable and relaxed you can be throughout life, the easier it is to then do more things or adapt or like push yourself a little bit further. You're not constantly feeling stressed or feeling anxious or feeling worried or putting yourself under pressure.
Yeah.
um and I get a sense from you that your journey hasn't just been one of physicality and movement. There's also been a shift in who you are and how you've approached your life as well. So do you mind sort of talking a little bit about what that journey's looked like behind the screen, shall we say?
Yeah, yeah. So that story that I was telling about, like when I injured my knee, and that like leading me into doing all these new types of training, like my lifestyle really paralleled what was going on in the physical training, which is cool for me because I find that that's usually like the case, right? What's going on physically is also going on emotionally and mentally
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. So around that time, I actually traveled out of my country for the first time ever, right? Hadn't done it until I was like, I believe I was 24. And
Wow.
I took a trip to Costa Rica. I just fell in love with like Costa Rica but also just traveling, right? Like being on the bus rides and like just seeing the landscapes and experiencing this new culture. And I realized that like I really want to do more of this, you know. And my lifestyle at the time was like set up to where I couldn't do a whole lot of that, right? Like I needed a gym to work out, I needed these weights, and I needed to be at my job, personal training people, all day long to make money. So it really set me on this trajectory of like, okay, like I want to make strength side into this thing that is mobile and I can be location independent and I can travel. And then of course, like the physical training, like I want to be able to be strong and be flexible and powerful and do all that without a gym and be able to do that from the road. And that, yeah, that really like changed my lifestyle. And really like just changed my perspective on a lot of things. I started valuing different things. I started valuing the experiences over like the material things, right?
Mm.
Kind of cliche to say, but when it happens, it's like, oh yeah, I would much rather take a trip than like get a new pair of sneakers, you know, like so uh yeah, it was just like a slow gradual process of like realizing what's really really important to me. And I just find like at the end of the day what's important to me is like I love going out to a park, doing my movement session, being able to move outdoors with the sun on my skin, and then like being able to go and travel or go out with my girlfriend and my dog and like have a nice hike and stuff like that, and just really trying to prioritize these aspects of my life over like the striving for more.
Yeah, I love that because I feel like we get caught in that trap, don't we? And it's like we get in the trap of I need more things. I need the bigger house. I need the nicer car. I need the better paying job. I need the next expensive, 5-star holiday because of whatever. I need the nicer clothes, and it's they serve a purpose in some realms, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to like experiencing life at its fullest, things like you mentioned, like travel, the freedom to roam and spend time with the people who mean a lot to you, doing the things that you enjoy. Like for you it's your work and your movement and being outside. For me it's very similar. I love nature, I love connecting with humans, I love being of service to people, which is why I have this
Mm.
podcast, which is why I coach. It's all of those things. And I think it's realizing that actually society, the way we live it now is kind of broken, and I think we
Mm.
saw that a lot last year with what happened with the pandemic, and how like a whole system globally just like collapsed because economically everything was going down, and and there was lots of tragedy and stuff, and it's like that that doesn't scream like the best case scenario in terms of the way that we live to me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. And my like our challenge I think is finding the balance, and I was putting some thought to this the other day. I was like, so I grew up like in the 90s, like I was a kid in the 90s where um we like I played with my friends after school until it got dark, like in the streets, like playing kickball or wiffle ball or whatever. And yeah, I would like just spend days outdoors and just playing like sports with my friends. But then also it was the time of like video games becoming popular, and like me and my brothers got really into like Bond 007 on the N64 and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I right. So like I think like what I'm trying to do now like mimics my childhood so much in that like I had a bit of that like freedom and just like play, but then I also had this like development of technology and like enjoying some of these newer developments that we have too. So like, can we find the balance? And that's what I'm constantly trying to do is like, okay, like I would love to like watch a nice Netflix series, but I don't want that to take over my life, you know? Like I also want to spend a lot of time outdoors and I want to play and like be explorative too. I do a lot of my work on the computer, but I need to like balance that out with moving a lot of the day as well. So, you know, I'm sure you're on the same wavelength of like that is our modern day challenge. And I think that there are people who are doing it well and like we can keep doing it better, you know?
Yeah, I think like a big thing for me was like last year was this idea of prioritizing fun. Like, because I feel like we have fun, right? But it's a different kind of fun to the type of fun you described when we were kids and you go out and you play with your mates. And you know, we
Yeah.
like where I am, there's like a kind of woodland area, so me and my mates we used to go out on our bikes. And you know, we wouldn't go out to like do anything specific or to try and achieve anything in particular. It'd be like we go out, we'd ride our bikes, we'd probably find some like little ramps in the mud that we'd ride up and down, and we,
Yeah.
you know, we'd have fun. And it's like I feel
Uh-huh.
like we somewhere along the line we've, as you grow older, through becoming an adult and having like responsibilities and jobs and stuff, we get disconnected from what fun means. Like fun sort of becomes going out and, you know, drinking and partying and
Right.
escaping from our reality rather
Mm,
than having fun in the environment and reality around us. And
mm,
it's like we get sucked in. And it's like even the thing with Netflix, like I love to watch films, I love really good programs, but I don't want those to consume my life, because yes, I find them fun to watch, but I don't classify that as having fun, because you're almost, you know, to me you're not necessarily being active. You can almost switch off whilst you do it, you know, whereas
mm.
fun is like you're engaging in something, you know.
Yes. Yes. I love that, dude. That's like you put that so well. And one way I like to think about that is like consuming versus creating. And
Yeah.
yeah, what like you like it is fun to consume sometimes. Like people are putting great stuff out there, so we should, but it should be like us. I think like a small percentage of what we're doing, and we should spend most of our time trying to create. And like creating doesn't have to be like painting and creating like a work of art. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
creating is simply like playing a game with your kids in the backyard, right? Like you're creating something into reality. Um, and yeah, like I think we all intuitively know when we're doing that, like we feel pretty good. We feel fulfilled, right? And but it's sometimes the harder thing to choose to do.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, you used the word balance earlier, and it's that's such a fine word, because it's like it gets misconstructed as well in terms of like, okay, balance means I need to like be taking care of this and taking care of that. And actually, you know, balance, to me, to find balance, you don't really need to do anything, because balance should address itself. That's kind of what the word means. Like, you know, you look
Mm,
at nature, it's like nature always finds a way to balance itself out. But it doesn't have to,
mm,
there's not like a plan in place for it to balance. It just does it. And it's like I find in my life, when I start to overwork myself, there's something that tells me I need to step back and I need to actually prioritize having the fun to pull the balance back. And then when I get to that point, it's like, okay, then you can start to integrate some more of the work stuff. And then all of a sudden the balance has been readdressed, and it's like it almost never was out of sync. So, but I'm interested to hear what does like balance mean to you?
yeah, I mean, I loved that what the way that you just described it there. And I agree. Like I think that naturally like we're gonna seek equilibrium, you know. So I love that concept of like it's kind of gonna take care of itself, you know. And it usually does. Like I just had a couple weeks ago, I was just like starting to train a little bit too much, and I was going a little bit too hard after some goals. And like luckily I didn't have a massive injury or anything, but I just had a little like tweak of something that was like, hey, here's a reminder that you need to like balance your shit out a little bit more, you know? Um, and like it's so my journey has been like listening to those smaller things that come at you, because if you don't listen to those, then you're gonna get like then it's when you get like the more intense injury or something, right? um and yeah, like yeah, I mean, wow, I really enjoy thinking about that question about balance, because I don't think I could say anything more elegant than you said about just like nature is always finding balance, and we intuitively can find that balance if we just like allow ourselves to, rather than like pushing through, which a lot of us tend to do. I know I do sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, we all do it. I certainly, do it. Like even the podcast, like this is going to be the first interview episode I've put out in a while because I had to take a step back to readdress the balance of like how much thought, like draining thought and energy I was putting into a
Mm.
process which I actually really enjoy, but it was becoming less fun because I was starting to drain myself with it. So and I think that's like an example for me is like when I got to that point I was like, actually now is probably a time where I need to take a little step back for a few weeks just to like, you know, bring that balance back because something is telling me that what I'm doing is not working for me, even though it's like something I really enjoy. It's not currently working. So I need to just get that balance back in place.
Yeah, I've had that same experience on YouTube, like making videos every single week, and it's fun and it's fun. And I'm like finding this like nice creative outlet. And then all of a sudden it gets to be um, more stress than anything else. And I'm like, okay, like what's the deal here? What am I missing? And usually I trace it back to I'm becoming too focused or too neurotic on certain things, on numbers, on metrics, and like I'm not following that just that like flow of like what I want to create, and then once I bring that back into tune, I start having fun again, and that like I find some flow there again.
Mm.
So definitely relate on that, of how like something that is a passion and is so fun can take that turn into like something that starts draining you more. Um, and yeah, like I'm glad that I can be your first guest back, uh, bringing the balance back this way.
Yeah, and talking about balance while we do it as well, which is
Right.
interesting. But so what's some of the things you do then when you find yourself, excuse me, when you find yourself in that place? What are some of the things that you do to kind of, take your mind off, like you said, getting sucked into the metrics and the numbers and the stuff to readdress the balance of like doing things that you enjoy doing for yourself, but also that benefit, the work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, usually the first step for me is like getting away from it. Like it's so easy to just, even when I think I'm away from it, to still be thinking about it a little bit, in my day to day. So it's like, okay, like let's take a day completely off from any type of work, any type of the whatever like my mind is too focused on, and let's go be in nature, and I really like this concept of I was just reading this. There's this great book called Exuberant Animal, and he talks about how like human beings, like we're able to focus on like one point, and then we're also able to like let our eyes defocus and see more of our peripheral vision, and essentially like the focus is more correlated with being in like a sympathetic nervous system, right? And then when we defocus and we get that peripheral view, and you can see like a lot of different layers of things, then we naturally go into parasympathetic and calm ourselves, right? And that's like definitely been my experience of like, okay, like let's get out of this. It's like it's it's literal and it's like metaphorical. Like, let's get out of this like focused point here, and like let's go just open up and like see the whole wide world, and like realize that this thing right here is just one small aspect of life. So that's usually like the most important thing to me, is just like let myself breathe, let myself see past what I'm looking at right here, and yeah, like find, and then usually I always come back like stronger from that. Like I
Hmm.
come back with a more, just more like vigor.
Yeah, yeah, I totally hear that. It's that zoomed out approach, isn't it? We hear about it all the time, like zooming out to see the big picture, and you soon realize that, a lot of the stuff we worry about is so, minor in some ways,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a really good little piece of advice there. So thank you. And one of the things that really interested me is I was watching a video. I think it was on your Instagram actually, and you were talking about living a kind of minimal life, which you've already kind of touched on.
Mm.
Um, I'm interested to hear what you've learned, personally through that journey, because I know, you know, being a minimalist, I don't know whether you call yourself that, or living a minimal life is a lot about letting go of stuff, right? To live more freely. So what's the learnings and lessons that you've made through that?
Yeah. The first thing that pops into my mind is that like when you let things go, that generally you think that you're going to miss them, but my experience has been that like that it doesn't really happen. Like once it's gone from your mind, then you tend to forget about it, and like the more you can do that, let certain things go out of your life. Like this could be like literal like things, or it could be more of like the baggage, I guess. But yeah, like it's easy to let it go, and it becomes easier and easier to let things go, and then it feels really good to only have a few things, right? And to really take pride in the things that you do have, and take care of the things that you do have, but not feel the need to like acquire more and more. Um, with that being said, like I don't really consider myself a minimalist. Like uh, I was like living very, very minimally for about 4 years, and then once we settled here in Texas for a little bit, I started like getting a bunch of stuff because I haven't had stuff in so long. I was
Yeah.
like I bought a motorcycle because I love riding a motorcycle, and just like bought a sauna for the house, and like I'm like accumulating more and more things, and like me and my girlfriend just joke like, oh yeah, we're definitely not minimalists anymore. But it's like because I went through that period, like it's still like very easy for me to let things go, and to know that like these are just things and I'm not super attached to them. Yeah, it's a very freeing way of life for sure.
Yeah, I get that. And I guess it's like even now with like the accumulation of stuff, it's like you're learning to appreciate those things fully because,
Yes.
you know, you haven't had so many things for such a long time that now you have your motorcycle, you have your sauna. It's like, wow, I bet you use your sauna all the time and you go ride your
Oh
bike
yeah.
whenever you can, because it's like you fully appreciate them. And that's where like the joy of, living more minimal comes from. It's like you get more joy out of the things that you use rather than just having stuff for the sake of it, and it's like we've all probably still got way too much stuff, no matter how much of a minimalist or how minimal you think you're living. You can always live more so, right? It's like I've got hundreds of books, and it's like I always think like I'm gonna get back to reading those books one day, and it's like it never happens. So it's like I could easily get rid of them, but at the same time I can't. And it's like I've got a wardrobe
Uh-huh.
full of like, maybe like 80 football shirts that I've collected over the years from like various bits of travel and etc. And it's like, as
Right.
much as I think like, yeah, so I can get rid of them, sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can actually. But it's about those things bringing you joy rather than them just being there and being so easily replaceable. And it's like, you can go online now, and it's like you could say to me like, hey Alex, I want to buy this thing, and I can probably go on Amazon and order it and get it sent to your house within 5 minutes. It's like there's no real appreciation for the things that we're buying because we're not buying them mindfully. We're buying them out of just like, instinct, or like just for the sake of wanting to hit the buy button and getting a hit of dopamine or whatever.
Yes, man. It's so dangerous, right? And it's like it goes back to this balance concept of like there at times, like recently there was like an exercise that I wanted to do for my foot, because my foot was like, I felt like it was like a little bit weak in this certain, so I like ordered something online. I was here 2 days later, I could start doing that exercise that I wanted to do so quick. And I'm like so thankful that um that I could do that, and that my body could improve from that. And at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, it's like, oh, just because like I think that I need a what's something kind of dumb that I got recently, like a new eye mask. I was like, oh, my eye mask isn't that great, I want a new one, so like I was like, oh, I gotta order this right now. And that's when you go into that dangerous territory of like just thinking, oh, I need to level up on this thing, right? So yeah, constantly just like trying to find that equilibrium of letting it
Mm.
help you, but not going too far with it.
Yeah, and I think ultimately there's nothing wrong with wanting things. Like we live in a world where we're told that we should want things all the time through like
Yeah.
adverts and what have you. And it's, I have the same battle of like the battle between wanting things and needing things. And it's like I've got a perfectly fine working mouse here, but I've also got like pain in my wrist from like using my phone and my mouse and gaming too much and stuff like that. So it's like I was looking at buying a vertical, like ergonomic mouse, to literally about an
Right.
hour before we did this recording.
Yeah.
And I was like sitting there and I was going through all these reviews and looking at all these things, and I was like, yeah, but do I actually need one? Like, I've got a mouse that works, but then I'm like, part of me is like, no, but I want it because I know it's gonna be really good for my wrist. So it's like there's this internal dialogue, and it's like just actually trying to see through that. And actually, my wrist is telling
Mhm.
me I need to do something. Going back to what we were saying about balance, right? My wrist is telling me it needs to be rebalanced. So having an ergonomic mouse is going to be beneficial. Well, more beneficial at least, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, it's like it's the thought process that you're
Mm.
going through. All right. I think that's important, right? Like some people aren't going through that thought process, and it's just like too quick to just consume. So as long as there's some thought around it, yeah. I also have a good routine on YouTube for your wrists. I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Might help you out a little bit.
Yeah, I'll check it out for sure. I do all sorts of weird stretches. I was like walking down the street the other day with my girlfriend. I was like, had my hand by my side, and I was like just rotating my wrist around and then like stretching out the fingers. She was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, just I'm just doing like a little exercise." She was like, "I thought you'd gone like mad and was like trying to like beat something out of the sky." And like, I was like, "No, just stretching my wrist."
Nice. It's good to be the weirdo. It's good to be
Yeah,
the
for
weirdo
sure.
in this day and age.
100% agree with that. Well, one thing I did want to touch on is motivation, because I know what it's like making content. We've been talking about balance and you know this sort of journey of like just trying to improve yourself one way or the other. Like, what's for you been the thing that's kept you motivated in terms of like wanted to continue growing? And I don't just mean that from a physical perspective in terms of your journey with like movement and stuff, but just as a human being, like what keeps you motivated to do that? Because I know sometimes it's like even with a gym routine or like an exercise thing, or it's so hard to like get into the consistency of it and stay motivated by it. Like what's the driver for you?
Yeah, well, in my earlier years I was a lot less consistent, and I've one thing that I have developed more and more is this, once again coming back to balance, this balance between like striving for something and then also surrendering. And like in my physical practice, for instance, this is this like plays the role of like, okay, I'm gonna do like these sets and reps, and I'm gonna put in this work to like make myself stronger in these certain ranges of motion or whatever. But then that my balance is practiced out with days that are just play, right? And they're just extremely explorative. Um, and I think for me that's kept my motivation levels high to have that balance, right? Because I think like if what you see a lot of the time is like people burn out, right? And it's just because we're like banging so hard on one end, and it's not balanced out by a little bit more of just like the experiencing or the surrendering. um and then you just run into burnout. And then the opposite can happen when you have no structure in your life and you're only just like playing and like living in this exploratory or explorative like fashion. Then you never get anywhere because you have no direction, right? So for me, it's been like really finding like, how can I balance these two? And when I do balance these two, it just keeps me like motivated to just keep going. And like there's never a stopping point, you know?
Mm.
um there's a great book called Do the Work by Stephen Pressfield. I don't know if you're familiar, but
Yeah.
yeah, like that, like Stephen Pressfield's work has really, really inspired me over the years. And I love how he almost talks about like just doing your work, putting your reps in as almost like a spiritual path of like just putting one step in front of the other. um it leads you to somewhere. And then like once again, like I mentioned earlier, this positive feedback loop, when you like get that positive feedback from like, hey, I've been like putting a lot of work into this, and oh, my life just up leveled a little bit, so I'm gonna keep putting a lot of work in, right? And that was like a lot of my YouTube journey. Was like in the early years I was just making videos, nobody was watching them. The growth was like really, really slow, but there was like a deep gut feeling of like, if I just keep going at this, I'm just gonna like keep improving. People are gonna catch on, like I get better, people like it more, and it just like creates this funnel of things like keeping like, and then that ended up happening. So yeah, there's like a lot of moving parts there, but like perseverance and balancing out um your play and creativity with just like, hey, I gotta sit
Mm.
down, I gotta do this work.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and I think something I'd like to throw in the mix there is like trying to make it feel effortless. Like
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast episode with what's his name now, Greg McCune. Do you know him? He's got a book called
Yeah.
Essentialism, and another
Essentialism.
one,
Yeah.
yeah, and his new
Uh-huh.
book's called, I think it's called Effortless actually, and he
Okay.
talks about like finding this space where the things you do just become effortless. So,
Mm.
for example, recording this podcast, like I try to make the path to getting here as effortless as possible. I shot you a DM. I got a reply from your assistant. She was like, "Can you send an email?" I was like, "Cool." So the next thing was like, I sent the email, and it like none of it seemed stressful because
Mm.
it wasn't like, "Oh my god," like I desperately want to have Josh get on, and if I don't, then like the whole podcast is a failure, and my podcast isn't good enough, and he doesn't rate me or whatever. It was just like, well, let's just see if it can happen. Like if it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's like an effortless approach, because then you're not so tied down or bogged down in like results. You're more just focused on like what you're saying from Stephen Pressfield's work is like tiny actions. And it's
Yes.
like when you can take those tiny actions, like it becomes effortless. And I think that rules across life. That doesn't just go with exercise or like making content. That's just like with relationships, with like your career path, with your personal growth, with like reading, with whatever it may, learning a new language. Just do one thing, and it's like then it will lead on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and it becomes effortless.
Absolutely. I love that, dude. I love that a lot. Yeah. I use a lot of like affirmations and stuff when I journal, just to like keep my mind right in that positive way. And one of my mantras is like, my life flows like a river. And
Hmm.
like that's essentially that that concept that you just talked about for me is like, if something feels like too much, too hard or whatever, like then how can we just like get back into that flow of things, right? And like I love how you described like, yeah, like attaching to the end product will usually cause some conflict in your mind. And if we just take this thing of like, well, I'm just going to try this, and if this works, I'm going to get here and then here. And that's really how I try to approach a lot of my life right now. And I see when I start to have conflict and I start to have suffering in my life, it's because I'm not finding that effortless state, right? Like I'm
Mm.
trying to use too much effort and I'm attaching to something too hard. So, yeah, man, love that concept. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, pleasure, man. I love the we just like trading love for love here, but I love the river um analogy as well, because it's like, as you said that, my mind went to, well, sometimes the river flows really like rushing and like the water's super high and it's super hard and it's super quick, and other times it's just trickling, and it's like
Yeah.
that's what effortless is. Sometimes you have to ride with the hard waves and the big water, and other times you just ride through the trickle, and it's like that's the perfect way to look at it. It's like whatever it is, it should be effortless, no, regardless. Um, so I've got some questions that have come in from the audience, which is a kind of new feature that I'm trying out. So this is the first time I'm doing it. So I reached out to a few people on my Instagram stories, said, look, I got this guy on board who's going to do a podcast with me, super into movement and stuff, and I had a few questions come back. So if you don't mind asking a couple, then I will shoot.
Let's
So
do it.
we've got one from Kay, and Kay asked, how do you find your own style of movement?
Oh, wow. That's such a good question. I think like style is such a fascinating concept because like people develop these like styles that like we perceive as really cool and flowy, or sometimes we perceive a style as like really powerful or explosive. And um, I think like, I'm not sure if this was before we started the podcast, but we were talking about like like learning from a lot of resources, surrounding yourself, like being a student of a lot of people who are teaching movement in this case, um, and learning from them, and then letting that like sit with you, and then seeing like what's the truest to you, and then essentially like letting that come out in your self-expression, like I think like it's so closely tied to like my journey in YouTube. Was like when I started, I was trying to emulate certain people that I liked that were teaching on YouTube, and that works for a while. Like I think emulation is a great place to start, but then eventually like your own style, your own expression is going to take the forefront if you keep at it, if you keep at like your own practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think like learning, being very aware, and then also like getting to that state where like you're very calm and you can let like your own expression come out of you.
Yeah, I love that idea of taking different, elements from different resources. I do the same when it comes to like, coaching practices. Like I pull some stuff from like spirituality, and that's from like, even that in
Right.
itself is from different sources. It's like, Eckhart Tolle's work. It's from like, Buddhism. It's from like different spiritual teachers, different, elements of psychology. And then also bring into the mix the stuff that I do with like my commitment to trying to improve myself physically and mentally. And it's like, you're pulling from all these different, like even like your work, I've taken just your approach to certain things and in some ways applied it to my work as a coach and even with this podcast. And it's like, I think that's so powerful because that's when you learn how to find your own way. And, that doesn't necessarily just have to be movement to answer Kate's question. That can be, again, with everything. But I think, yeah, pulling from different resources is like just an incredible way to do it because you're trying different things and then applying what you've learned in different ways. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then like the Alex style appears,
Mm-hmm.
and then like the longer you keep on doing it, then like the more refined Alex's style becomes, right? So like I think another big component of it is just like spending time, spending years doing your thing, and that's when like refinement happens and mastery happens, right?
Yeah, and I guess also letting it happen at its own pace instead of trying to force it, because when you try to force
Yeah.
it, that's when you fall into the trying to replicate someone else, because you're seeing, oh, they're doing it successfully or in a better way than I am, or a perceived better way than I am. Let me try and copy them. So yeah, I think letting it unfold by itself. So the
Absolutely.
next question is from Courtney, and this is actually quite a relevant one because with a lot of people, obviously working from home these days, Courtney has asked, what are the best work from home mobility exercises?
Mm. So, hmm.
Hard to describe on a podcast, I know.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so first I'll talk more theoretical and then I'll talk a little bit more practical. I mean, I think like in the big picture, like the best way to take care of your body is to move more, right? And to get like to just work more positions and movement into your flow. So like the worst thing that you can do is just be in a static position for like 2 hours straight, right? Even if you're deeming that position as a good position, like it's just not how we're designed to be so much as human beings. So I think like switching up your position is probably number one, right? When you're working from home.
So,
And then,
just sorry, Josh, but just to
yeah,
clarify on that, you mean like going from sitting at a desk to like standing to maybe sitting on the floor to maybe I don't know, lying down. Is that what you kind of mean?
yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I mean. And yeah, and like in being creative, like it's not just about sitting and standing. Like I think that's where a lot of people get mixed up too, is like, well, I sit for half an hour and then I stand for half an hour. But it's like, how are you sitting? Like let's like sitting on the floor is so much better than sitting in a chair, right? And then like we can sit cross-legged, and then we can sit like one leg tucked, right? And then you can like sit on your knees and we can sit with our legs out, right? Just like using all of these variations that the human body can do, like just using them, right? It's easy to get trapped in that one position, but yeah, mixing it up will have the most bang for your buck. And then so practically, a little bit more practically, I'd love for people to just sit down into a deep squat. Like it's so good for your hips, your knees, your ankles. If that's hard for you, then put some books or put some elevation underneath your heels and spend some time down there. And then like a basic like hip flexor stretch, most people can benefit from. You just get in like a kneeling position with one knee down, like a little lunge position, and then just pushing your hips forward a bit, and you'll feel a stretch in your hip flexors and your quads, and like 90% of us in the Western culture need that to balance out some of the sitting that we're doing.
Yeah, and that's because the hip flexor shortens when you sit. So the more time you spend sitting, the shorter it becomes. So it's like readdress again. It's balancing out, isn't it? The stretch not fights against that, but addresses it, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. And then one final one from Diana. She has asked, what are your thoughts on the Alexander technique? So I'm going to just throw this in the mix as well. If you could explain a little bit about what that is, if you know a lot about what that is, of course. If you don't, then it's cool.
So like I know a little bit about the Alexander technique. I wouldn't feel super comfortable like describing it, to be honest with you. I'm not that versed in it. I've definitely like have heard people um get awesome results from it. I think like for I think it's focused on like strengthening some of the weak points that we tend to accumulate in like the things that we're talking about, our Western culture, sitting too much and stuff like that. It addresses a lot of those. So yeah, like man, to be honest, I think I'm a fan of a lot of different techniques and methods of training. I think a lot of things can work for most people. And I really believe that like it's really the mindset that you take into it, right? Like essentially what a lot of these things have in common is that like you're working more movement into your life. and you're addressing some of these weak links that we tend to get ourselves into. And if you have the mindset of like, this thing's awesome, this is going to help me, then, you know, like a lot of the time, majority of the time, it is going to help you. Right. So sometimes we get in this mindset of like, well, should I do this technique or this method? Should I follow this coach? Should I do this? And then like we don't do anything. And it's just no, just pick one and just do it for like a period of time, get the results. And then if you feel like now I want to try something else, then try something else. Right.
Yeah, like I definitely resonate with that because I feel like it's like you said, it's as much the mindset as it is the thing. And it's like I say this to coaching clients. I'm like, it's not necessarily whether you work with this coach or you go and do therapy or you do counseling. It's like it's the mindset that you're bringing into it of like wanting to create the transformation that you seek. And it's like that's what brings the results, not necessarily the person or the thing or the technique or the strategy. And then, yeah, man. So that's a very, very valid point. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So I have one final question for you
Yeah.
before we depart, and that is, what are you trying to create for the rest of the year? Like, what is it that you want to create for yourself, for your life, and you know, I guess business and everything?
Well, I'm always looking for that flow concept that we were talking about earlier, that flow and effortless concept. So, um, yeah, like the thing that I'm really trying to cultivate in my life is just like for my days to just to just like keep put like for me to wake up excited and for me to get to do work that I'm excited about and to get to go do training sessions and move my body in ways that excite me and to spend time with my friends and my family and to be to just be like really filled up and excited by that. So that's always like what I'm trying to cultivate. In terms of like strength side, I'm super excited about strength side right now. We've kind of like started to do different types of content, and we're sharing a bit more of mixing up some of our like tutorial type videos with sharing a bit more of like my own practice and the stuff that I'm up to, and sharing some lifestyle stuff, because over the years, like strength side has really taken the shape of being not just a fitness brand, but more of a lifestyle brand.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what we talked about today, like bringing all these concepts together into like living a more holistic life that supports us like in our naturalness as human beings. So that really excites me, just sharing more and more of that, and getting to like show a little bit more of my own life and my own personality and just having fun with it. And that's the last couple months have been really, really fun. And I just want to keep that going. One thing I will add is me and my girlfriend are we are headed over to Europe actually in August, and we
Nice.
really want to come to England. We're gonna see like how that is with the travel right now with COVID and everything, but we're going to Italy, and then I think I mentioned to you my coach. He lives in Brighton, I think it
Okay,
is.
sick.
But also like I've been to London once. I love London. I actually just man, I love UK. I love like English culture, dude. Like I'm such like some of my favorite TV shows are English
Oh
shows,
yeah.
and yeah, what's that one show that oh my gosh, it's so funny. It's about like the corrupt FM, the
Oh
pirate
yeah,
radio.
yeah. Oh man, that's like cult over here.
People do nothing, right?
People
Is
do
that what it's
nothing.
called?
People just do nothing. Yeah.
People just do nothing. Oh man, like that kind of humor is just like so funny to me. I also like love there's such good. I've started doing parkour recently.
Mm.
There's such good parkour, like the Stora parkour YouTube channel is like so good. Like those guys are just super funny and inspiring and stuff. So yeah. Anyways, that's kind of a side tangent, but that's what I'm really excited about, as well as getting over to Europe and spending a little bit of time over in your guys' side of the world.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, look, if you find yourself in London or even Brighton, then to give me a shout, man. It'd be good to go out
Definitely.
and climb some trees or something somewhere.
Heck yeah, that'd be great.
Be awesome. Cool, man. So look, to sign out, do you want to let people know where they can find you online and some of your resources? Like, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, I usually tell people like just type in Strength Side on YouTube, and we have so much content there that you can try out one of our mini follow along routines, or watch any type of video that interests you. And if you like the vibe, then you can watch more, or just go to that description box and you can follow us on Instagram, or we have free programs that you can try out and stuff like that. So YouTube's a great place to start, and yeah, come over and check us out, and yeah, hang around, have some fun with us.
Awesome, man. Well, look, Josh, thank you so much for the time today, man. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope that you do make it over to Europe, and I hope that we can maybe do this in person one day. That'd be quite cool as well. Whether we record it or not, it would be cool. So I appreciate it today, man.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, like I think I've only done like one in-person podcast. I've done so many over Zoom, so that would be really cool to like sit down and do a
Yeah.
part two in person. So we'll have to look at that.
Yeah, dude, I tell you what, I missed that, man. I was doing them for like 3 years before obviously COVID. So it's like I
Yeah.
missed the in-person like vibe, but I'm getting used to the Zoom vibe. It's cool.
Right. No, I think like Zoom, like you could still create like a pretty good connection over this, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe in person will happen.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Well, thank you, man. I hope you have an amazing day.
Cool. Thanks, Alex.